Emily, a vibrant woman in her late 20s, lived a life of strict supervision under her parents in Austin, Texas. Her parents, unyielding in their control, dictated her every move, allowing her little freedom. Emily, an aspiring graphic designer, focused on her college studies, seeking an escape through her passion for design. In her final year of college, David, a man in his early 30s from a wealthy family, entered her life. David proposed to Emily, and although she did not love him, she agreed to marry him. Her parents, convinced that David could provide her with a secure and carefree life, pressured her into the marriage. Emily, accustomed to obeying her parents, accepted David's proposal, hoping for a brighter future. David proved to be a good provider, but he imposed numerous restrictions on Emily, mirroring the control her parents had over her. Emily managed to keep her job as a graphic designer, the one aspect of her life where she felt a semblance of independence. However, David's true intentions for the marriage soon surfaced. His parents had insisted he find a wife to secure his access to their wealth, and he had chosen Emily for her obedience. The birth of their son, Ethan, brought Emily genuine happiness for the first time. Holding her newborn, she felt a deep sense of joy and purpose. However, this joy was short-lived. David became increasingly irritated by Ethan's cries and Emily's divided attention. The arguments between them escalated, and David's outbursts grew more frequent and violent. Emily's parents, unsupportive as always, urged her to endure for the sake of her marriage. Over the next 4 years, Emily secretly saved money, preparing for the day she might need to leave David. The turning point came when David brought another woman home, openly flaunting his infidelity. He ordered Emily and Ethan to leave, telling her there would be another woman in the house, one he wasn't ashamed to show off to his friends. Emily, surprisingly relieved by the prospect of freedom, sought help from her parents but was met with cold rejection. They told her to endure and not to come back with Ethan. Feeling lost, Emily turned to Aunt May, a kind cleaning lady who had always been a friend. Aunt May directed her to Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who rented rooms. Mrs. Thompson, compassionate and understanding, offered Emily and Ethan a place to stay. Emily and Ethan began to adapt to their new life. Emily continued working as a graphic designer, while Ethan started attending kindergarten. Mrs. Thompson provided the support and warmth they desperately needed, creating a sense of home and stability they had never experienced before. One day, while spending time in the park, Emily and Ethan met Ryan, an architect in his late 40s. They bonded over their shared love for design, and Ryan quickly became a frequent companion. Despite Emily's growing feelings for Ryan, he hesitated to get closer, harboring a secret that weighed heavily on his heart. Their budding friendship was a source of comfort for Emily, who found herself slowly healing from the emotional scars left by David. She began to envision a future where she and Ethan could find true happiness and love. Little did she know that Ryan's secret would soon change their lives forever. As the days passed, Emily and Ryan's bond grew stronger. Emily felt a sense of hope and resilience she hadn't felt in years, but the suspense of Ryan's unspoken truth loomed over their growing relationship. What could be holding him back? The answer, when revealed, would set the stage for a new chapter in Emily and Ethan's lives. Emily's life began to stabilize as she and Ethan settled into their new home with Mrs. Thompson. The elderly woman provided the warmth and support Emily had longed for, and the small household started to feel like a real family. Emily continued to work as a graphic designer, pouring her energy into her projects and finding solace in her work. Ethan thrived in kindergarten, making new friends and enjoying the nurturing environment. Despite the newfound peace, Emily couldn't ignore the growing bond she had with Ryan. Their conversations in the park became a regular occurrence, and they often talked about their shared passion for design and architecture. Ethan quickly took a liking to Ryan, seeing him as a father figure who treated him with kindness and respect. One sunny afternoon, Emily and Ethan were in the park collecting leaves and acorns for a kindergarten project. They sat on a bench, discussing what they could create with their findings, when Ryan approached them with a smile. "You know," Ryan said, taking a seat next to them, You can make an owl out of those leaves. I used to do that when I was a kid. Ethan's eyes lit up. Can you show us how, Mr. Ryan? Of course, Ryan replied, ruffling Ethan's hair. But let's not make it too complicated. Okay? As they crafted the owl together, Emily felt a warm connection growing between them. Yet, despite their closeness, Ryan remained reserved, as if something was holding him back. Emily couldn't help but wonder what was troubling him. Weeks turned into months, and their friendship deepened. Emily found herself increasingly drawn to Ryan, appreciating his gentle nature and the way he treated Ethan. However, she sensed that Ryan was hiding something significant. She decided it was time to address her feelings and his hesitations. One evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Emily and Ryan sat on the porch, sipping tea and enjoying the cool Austin breeze. Emily took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Ryan, she began, there's something I need to ask you. We've grown close, and I feel like there's a connection between us. But I also feel like you're holding back. Is there something you're not telling me? Ryan looked down, his expression pained. He took a moment before responding. Emily, there's something I need to tell you. It's not easy for me, but you deserve to know the truth. Emily's heart raced as she waited for him to continue. A little over a year ago, I was diagnosed with a terminal illness, Ryan said quietly. The doctors gave me 6 months to live. I underwent treatment, but the prognosis remained grim. I didn't want to burden anyone with my situation, so I kept it to myself. Meeting you and Ethan has given me more time and happiness than I ever expected. Emily was stunned. Tears welled up in her eyes as she processed his words. Ryan, why didn't you tell me sooner? You didn't have to go through this alone. I didn't want to scare you away, Ryan admitted. I care about you both so much, and I didn't want my illness to overshadow our time together. Emily reached out and took his hand. Ryan, you're not a burden. You've brought so much joy into our lives. We'll face this together, no matter what happens. From that moment on, Emily and Ryan grew even closer, cherishing every moment they had. Ryan took Emily to a notary, where he transferred his house and savings to her and Ethan. I want to make sure you're both taken care of, he explained. I may not have much time left, but I want you to have a future. Emily moved into Ryan's house with Ethan, and Mrs. Thompson continued to provide her unwavering support. When Ryan's health deteriorated, Emily stayed by his side, caring for him with love and devotion. Mrs. Thompson helped by looking after Ethan, ensuring he felt safe and loved. Ryan's condition worsened, and he was eventually admitted to the hospital. Emily practically lived there, spending every moment she could with him. Ethan visited daily, bringing a smile to Ryan's face even in his weakest moments. One evening, as Ryan lay in his hospital bed, he turned to Emily with a weak smile. Promise me something, Emily, he whispered. Anything, she replied, holding his hand tightly. Promise me that you and Ethan will find happiness. Don't let anyone mistreat you ever again. You both deserve so much more. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she nodded. I promise, Ryan. We'll be happy, I swear. Ryan passed away peacefully that night, surrounded by the love of Emily and Ethan. His colleagues honored him with a tribute, celebrating his life and the impact he had on those around him. Emily and Ethan faced the future with a renewed sense of resilience and hope, carrying Ryan's memory in their hearts. Their journey was far from over, but they knew they had the strength to overcome any obstacle in their search for genuine happiness and love. Emily and Ethan adapted to life without Ryan, drawing strength from the loving memories he left behind. The house he had transferred to them became a sanctuary where they felt safe and cherished. Emily threw herself into her work as a graphic designer, finding solace in her creative projects. Ethan continued to thrive at school, and Mrs. Thompson remained a steadfast presence in their lives, providing the stability they needed. One evening, as Emily was working on a new design project, Ethan approached her with a question. Mom, why doesn't Mr. Ryan come to visit us anymore? Emily's heart ached at the innocence in her son's eyes. She sat him down and gently explained, Ethan, Mr. Ryan was very sick. He loved us very much, but he had to go to a place where he can rest and not feel any more pain. But he's always with us in our hearts. Ethan nodded solemnly. I miss him, Mom. I miss him too, Emily replied, hugging her son tightly. But we'll always remember the happiness he brought into our lives. The weeks passed, and Emily focused on building a future for herself and Ethan. She found joy in small moments, like watching Ethan play in the park or helping him with his school projects. The pain of losing Ryan lingered, but Emily was determined to honor his memory by living a life full of love and resilience. One day, as Emily was picking Ethan up from school, she noticed a man watching them from a distance. His disheveled appearance and intense gaze made her uneasy. She hurried Ethan into the car and drove home, her mind racing with questions. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. That evening, she confided in Mrs. Thompson. There's this man I saw today, and he was watching us. It made me feel really uncomfortable. Mrs. Thompson frowned. Did you recognize him? No, but there's something about him that seemed familiar, Emily replied, shivering at the memory. Keep an eye out, dear, Mrs. Thompson advised. And if you see him again, don't hesitate to call the police. A few days later, as Emily and Ethan were walking to the park, the same man appeared again. This time he approached them. Emily's heart pounded as she instinctively pulled Ethan closer. Emily, the man called out, his voice rough and desperate. It's me, David. Emily's eyes widened in shock. David, her ex-husband, looked nothing like the confident, wealthy man she once knew. His clothes were worn, and his face bore the marks of hardship. What do you want, David? Emily asked, her voice trembling with anger and fear. I need your help, David pleaded. I've lost everything. My parents cut me off, and the woman I left you for took all my money. I have nowhere else to go. Emily felt a surge of conflicting emotions. She remembered the pain David had caused her, the betrayal and abuse. But she also saw a broken man standing before her, begging for mercy. You put us through hell, David, Emily said, her voice firm. You threw us out without a second thought. Why should I help you now? Please, Emily, David begged. I've changed. I realize now how much I hurt you and Ethan. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. Emily hesitated, torn between her desire to protect her son and the part of her that still believed in forgiveness. She glanced down at Ethan, who was clinging to her leg, looking confused and scared. Mom, who is this man? Ethan asked, his voice small. Emily took a deep breath. This is David, your father. Ethan's eyes widened in surprise. My father? But you said he was mean to us. He was sweetheart, Emily said gently. But sometimes people make mistakes, and they try to change. David's eyes filled with tears. Please, Emily, just give me a chance to prove I'm different. Emily looked into David's eyes, searching for any sign of sincerity. She saw a glimmer of hope, but she knew she had to be cautious. I'll think about it, David, but you need to prove that you've really changed. Ethan and I have been through too much to risk getting hurt again. David nodded, relief washing over his face. Thank you, Emily. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make amends. As they parted ways, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She had given David a chance, but she was determined to protect herself and Ethan from any more pain. She knew that resilience and the search for genuine happiness and love would guide her decisions. The days that followed were tense. David made several attempts to reach out, trying to prove his sincerity. Emily watched his actions closely, wary of letting her guard down. She sought advice from Mrs. Thompson, who remained a pillar of support. People can change, Emily, Mrs. Thompson said one evening as they sat in the kitchen. But it doesn't mean you have to forget what happened. Be careful and take things slow. Emily nodded, appreciating the wisdom in Mrs. Thompson's words. She continued to focus on her work and Ethan, finding strength in the routine they had built. The future remained uncertain, but Emily knew that she had the resilience to face whatever came next. As the weeks passed, Emily cautiously allowed David limited interaction with Ethan, always under her watchful eye. David seemed genuinely remorseful, doing his best to show that he had changed. He found a job at a local hardware store and began attending counseling sessions. Emily appreciated his efforts, but her trust in him was still fragile. One afternoon, David asked Emily if he could take Ethan to the park. Emily hesitated but agreed, knowing how much Ethan enjoyed playing there. She decided to accompany them, wanting to ensure Ethan's safety. As they arrived at the park, Ethan ran off to play, and Emily and David sat on a bench, watching him. "Thank you for giving me this chance," David said, his voice sincere. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." Emily nodded. "Ethan deserves to know his father. But remember, if you hurt him or me again, there won't be another chance." "I understand," David replied. "I won't let you down." Emily watched Ethan play, her heart heavy with the burden of their past. She wanted to believe David had changed, but the memories of his abuse were hard to erase. As the months went by, David's presence became more consistent. He was patient and kind with Ethan, slowly rebuilding his relationship with his son. Emily observed these interactions with cautious optimism, hoping for the best but prepared for the worst. One evening, Emily received a call from Mrs. Thompson. "Emily, dear, can you come over? There's something important we need to discuss." Emily's heart raced as she hurried to Mrs. Thompson's house, wondering what could be so urgent. When she arrived, Mrs. Thompson sat her down and took her hands in hers. "Emily, I've been thinking about your situation with David," Mrs. Thompson began. "I know you're trying to give him a chance, but you need to ensure your and Ethan's safety. I have a proposal for you." Emily listened intently as Mrs. Thompson explained her plan. "I have a close friend who is a family lawyer. She can help you draw up a legal agreement to protect you and Ethan. This way, if David truly has changed, he'll have no issue agreeing to it. If not, you'll have the security you need." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. This means a lot to me." The next day, Emily met with the lawyer and explained her situation. The lawyer drafted a detailed agreement outlining David's responsibilities and limitations, ensuring that Emily and Ethan would be protected. When Emily presented the agreement to David, he signed it without hesitation. "I understand why you need this," David said, "and I want to prove that I'm committed to making things right." With the agreement in place, Emily felt a renewed sense of control and security. She continued to focus on her work and Ethan, finding joy in their day-to-day life. Ethan, now more settled and happy, flourished in school and his artistic pursuits. As the years passed, Emily found herself growing closer to Michael, a kind and supportive man she had met through mutual friends. Michael adored Ethan and treated him as his own son. Their relationship blossomed, and eventually, Michael proposed to Emily. She accepted, feeling a deep sense of happiness and love that she had longed for. 7 years after Ryan's death, Emily stood by Ethan's side as he prepared for an art competition. Ethan, now a skilled artist, had dedicated his latest work to Ryan, the man who had brought hope and joy into their lives. The competition was held in a grand hall, and as Ethan's name was called, Emily felt a surge of pride. Ethan took the stage, holding his artwork. "I dedicate this piece to Ryan," he said, his voice steady. "He showed my mom and me what it means to love and be loved. Thank you, Ryan, for everything." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she watched her son. Michael stood beside her, holding her hand. They had built a life filled with love and happiness, overcoming the trials of the past. On the other side of the city, David sat alone in his small apartment, watching the competition on TV. He saw Ethan on the screen, recognizing his son. David had changed, but he knew he could never undo the pain he had caused. He watched in silence, feeling a mixture of regret and pride. Emily, Michael, and Ethan returned home after the competition, where Mrs. Thompson had prepared a celebratory dinner. They gathered around the table, laughing and sharing stories. The warmth and love in the room were palpable, a testament to their resilience and determination. Emily looked around at her family, her heart full. She had found genuine happiness and love, overcoming the darkness of her past. Ryan's memory lived on in their hearts, a reminder of the love and hope he had given them. As the evening drew to a close, Emily tucked Ethan into bed. "Good night, sweetheart," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "Good night, Mom," Ethan replied, smiling. "I love you. I love you too," Emily said, her heart overflowing with gratitude. She turned off the light and closed the door, knowing that their journey of resilience and the search for genuine happiness and love would continue, stronger than ever.